Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shiban Janna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, Donald Trump has slammed Iran's response to a U.S. peace proposal as totally unacceptable. And this as tensions rise again in West Asia. Israel says Iran's nuclear program remains active, but Iran has warned countries enforcing sanctions could face trouble in the Strait of Hormuz amid all these fresh Gulf drone attacks. Is this a deadlock? And if it's not, what happens next? We'll bring you all the details on the show.
Also on World DNA, Russia and Ukraine have swapped accusations of violating a US-brokered three-day ceasefire. Moscow has accused Kiev of over 16,000 ceasefire violations, while Ukrainian President Zelensky says Russian forces continued assault operations on the battlefield. We'll bring you the latest on that battlefield front as well. Let's start with the headlines. This is World DNA.
China announces dates of U.S. President Donald Trump's upcoming state visit. Trump will visit China from May 13th to 15th.
What President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be taken out before the war against Iran can be considered over.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to admit that neither Israel nor the U.S. predicted Iran's effective use of Hormuz Strait before the war began, saying that he does not claim to have perfect foresight.
U.S. President Donald Trump brands Iran's terms for ending the war totally unacceptable, raising the likelihood of renewed conflict. Iran says its response was a rejection of an earlier American proposal.
Iranian media says the latest Iranian proposal calls for an end of war on all fronts, war reparations by the U.S., full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, an end to sanctions, and the release of seized Iranian assets.
U.S. Army says that the body of an American soldier who went missing while in Morocco for an annual training exercise has been recovered.
Russia and Ukraine swap accusations of breaking the three-day ceasefire. Both sides claim to have suffered casualties in drone and artillery strikes over the past 24 hours.
Thailand's former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was released early from prison. He had been serving a one-year prison sentence for corruption since September and will be required to wear an electronic monitor during his 4-month probation period.
कि साल भर तक घर में कोई भी फंक्शन हो, कोई भी कार्यक्रम हो, हम सोने के गहने नहीं खरीदेंगे.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for collective participation to help India face global economic disruptions in view of the impact of Iran war, urges to revive work-from-home practices, cut fuel consumption, and avoid buying gold for a year.
Oil prices surged on Monday after Donald Trump rejected Tehran's response to a U.S. peace proposal and Iran renewed threats in the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude is trading above $104 and the U.S. crude is around $99 per barrel. Both benchmarks are up more than 3%. US-Iran ceasefire is hanging by a thread as both sides continue exchanging fire in the Strait of Hormuz.
And amid this, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war in West Asia is not over yet. In an exclusive interview with CBS News, Netanyahu said Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be taken out before the war can be considered over. When asked how the uranium could be removed, he said, and I'm quoting him, "You go in and you take it out." Netanyahu also claimed that U.S. President Donald Trump had a similar position.
What President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way.
When pressed on whether there are military options to seize the hidden uranium in Iran, Netanyahu said that he would not discuss such possibilities or any kind of a timetable for it.
I'm not going to give a timetable to it, but I'm going to say that's a terrifically important mission.
In addition to the unresolved uranium stockpile issue, Netanyahu said there are still other war objectives yet to be achieved, including countering groups which he described as Iranian proxies.
Now, he appeared optimistic about how a toppled Iranian regime could mean the end of Hezbollah as well as Hamas and the Houthis. He said, I quote here, "The whole scaffolding of the proxy network of Iran that Iran built collapses if the regime in Iran collapses."
Well, Netanyahu also claimed China was giving a certain amount of support to Iran and particular components of missile manufacturing, but refused to reveal more on that. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has branded Iran's terms for ending the war totally unacceptable.
And this has only raised the likelihood of renewed conflict. After weeks of negotiations, Iran says that its response was a rejection of the US proposal that was given to them earlier. Iran had sent its response via Pakistani mediators.
Iranian media has released the details of the proposal. Iran seeks to end the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon. It also wants the U.S. to pay war damages and recognize Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has also demanded end of American sanctions and the release of Iran's blocked assets by the U.S. According to the semi-official Tasnim news agency, the response also calls on the U.S. to end its naval blockade, guarantee no further attacks, and end a U.S. ban on Iranian oil sales.
But Trump himself provided no details on Tehran's counter-proposal, but in a brief post on Truth Social, he made it clear that he was rejecting it. Trump said, and I quote, "I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable."
Now, the American proposal had reportedly focused on extending the truce in the Gulf to allow for talks on a final settlement of the conflict and on Iran's contested nuclear program. Iranian state television reports that Iran rejected the proposal as amounting to surrender.
The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said on Sunday on social media that Iran will never bow down to the enemy. And if there is talk of dialogue or negotiation, it does not mean surrender or retreat.
Now, the back and forth came as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisted the conflict was not over until Iran's enriched uranium was removed and its nuclear facilities dismantled.
The Wall Street Journal, citing people familiar with the matter, said that Iran has laid out its own demands to US and proposed to have some of its highly enriched uranium diluted and the rest transferred to a third country. Iran has reportedly also sought guarantees that the transferred uranium will be returned if these negotiations fail or if Washington quits the agreement later.
Now, Trump made no mention of such details in rejecting Iran's response. A senior U.S. administration official said that Trump is expected to press President Xi Jinping of China, who is a major buyer of Iranian oil, on Iran when he visits Beijing this coming week.
Iran imposed a blockade on the vital Strait of Hormuz early in the war, sending global oil prices soaring and rattling financial markets. The U.S. Navy, meanwhile, is blockading Iran's ports, at times even disabling or diverting ships heading to and from them.
Meanwhile, reports say that Britain and France are sending vessels to the region in advance. Iran has warned that Britain and France would need a decisive and immediate response should they deploy their ships to the strait.
French President Emmanuel Macron later insisted that his country had never envisaged a naval deployment in the Strait of Hormuz, but rather a security mission coordinated with Iran.
And so we have never considered, I invite you to review all my statements from day one, deploying forces to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That has never been France's option.
Britain and France will host a multinational meeting of defense ministers from more than 40 nations on military plans to restore trade flows through the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran has released jailed Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi on heavy bail following urgent concerns over her deteriorating health.
Now, she was hospitalized due to two suspected heart attacks in prison, one in March and another in early May. Her husband, Athagi Rahmani, warned that a temporary medical release is not enough, saying she must not be returned to prison conditions that have severely damaged her health. She is yet to face the 18 years remaining on her sentence.
Mohammadi, who won the 2023 Nobel Peace Prize for her decades-long human rights advocacy, had been serving a sentence in Zanjan prison before being hospitalized for 10 days. Her foundation confirmed that she is being treated by her own medical team after what supporters described as a catastrophic health failure.
The 54-year-old activist spent much of the past 2 decades in and out of jail for campaigning against capital punishment, compulsory veiling laws, and broader political repression in Iran.
And she also supported nationwide protests triggered by the suspicious death of Mahsa Amini in 2022. The movement had intensified international scrutiny of Iran's human rights record.
Now, her legal team has also confirmed that the suspension of her sentence were granted specifically to allow urgent medical treatment, though details of the bail conditions remain undisclosed. Mohammadi's lawyer earlier said she had lost significant weight, struggled to speak, and was unrecognizable. Iranian authorities suspended the sentence and released her on bail after days of mounting international pressure. Now, Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of continuing attacks despite a 3-day ceasefire.
And in an address, Ukraine's President Zelensky said that although Russia refrained from massive aerial and missile strikes on Ukraine, Russian attacks continued along the front lines. According to Zelensky, nearly 10,000 kamikaze drones and the kamikaze drone strikes were over 100 instances of shelling were also reported in the frontline areas. Ukrainian officials say that the Russian attacks led to multiple casualties and injuries.
There were no massive attacks today, no missile or airstrikes, but there was no peace in the frontline areas and communities near the front. The Russians continue their assault activity in directions that are key for them. There is shelling. There were drone strikes of various types at the front. Over yesterday and today, there were more than 150 assault actions, more than 100 instances of shelling, and nearly 10,000 kamikaze drone strikes. In other words, the Russian army is not observing the silence at the front, and is not even particularly trying to. All our Ukrainian units are acting in a mirror-like manner, defending our positions exactly as required.
Well, on the other hand, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed it strictly adhered to the 3-day ceasefire and instead blamed Ukraine for over 8,970 alleged ceasefire violations. The ministry claimed Ukrainian forces targeted civilian infrastructure in Crimea, Moscow, and Belgorod region. It said Russian forces conducted retaliatory strikes against Ukrainian fire positions, command posts, and drone launch sites.
But Zelensky also said that Ukrainian officials are in touch with the US for the proposed exchange of 1,000 prisoners between Ukraine and Russia. He said Kiev had already handed over the list of prisoners to Moscow and expected Washington to help ensure the deal was implemented.
Our contacts with the American side regarding guarantees are currently ongoing. guarantees for the implementation of the agreements that were recently reached and mentioned by the US President. 1,000 for 1,000 prisoner exchange is being prepared and must be carried out. The Americans took these guarantees upon themselves. The Ukrainian coordination headquarters has handed over the lists of 1,000 to the Russian side. There was American mediation in this exchange agreement. Accordingly, we expect the American side to be active in ensuring the fulfillment of these agreements.
Zelensky's comments comes day after Putin said that Russia had not received any proposals from Ukraine on the prisoner swap.
Well, just last week, US President Donald Trump had announced the 3-day ceasefire, saying the two sides had agreed to stop all kinetic warfare for a 3-day period. Since Russia's invasion in 2022 of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine has killed hundreds of thousands of people and spiraled into Europe's deadliest war since World War II. The body of one of two US soldiers who went missing in southern Morocco has been found.
And in a statement, Morocco's army has said that the body has been recovered from the sea. Last week, 2 US soldiers went missing near a cliff on the Atlantic coast while taking part in the African Lion 2026 military exercises. A massive search operation was launched by US, Moroccan, and allied forces after the incident. A U.S. military official who spoke to AFP media ruled out terrorism and pointed to the likelihood of an accident as the 2 soldiers may have fallen into the sea. While search operations are currently underway to locate the body of the second U.S. soldier.
According to U.S. Africa Command, the search operations have covered more than 8,000 square kilometers of sea and the coast and included more than 10 aircraft, Moroccan cave divers and an unmanned underwater vehicle. The African Lion 2026 exercise involved nearly 5,000 troops from more than 40 countries, as well as experts specializing in security and defense.
Now, a new global democracy study says international opinion of the United States has worsened for the second straight year, with perceptions now ranking below those of Russia.
Now, the findings come amid growing strain within the NATO alliance with US President Donald Trump. The study was carried out by polling firm NIRA data between March 19th and April 21st. More than 94,000 people across 98 countries took part in the survey. The report has been released ahead of the Copenhagen Democracy Summit, scheduled to begin on the 12th of May.
The survey found that after Russia and Israel, the United States was among the countries most frequently identified as a major threat to the world. North Korea, Afghanistan, and Iran are also on the list. While the report did not detail the exact criteria behind those perceptions, the organization says its mission is to promote and protect democratic values worldwide.
And reacting to the findings, Alliance founder and former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the sharp decline in America's global image was disappointing but not surprising. He pointed to several US policy decisions over the past year and a half that have unsettled allies.
And this includes the imposition of tariffs, repeated remarks about taking control of Greenland. The report also highlights concerns over reduced U.S. support for Ukraine, tensions linked to the conflict involving Iran and Israel, and rising oil prices. According to the Democracy Perception Index, DPI, views of the United States dropped sharply, moving from a positive rating of 22% 2 years ago to negative 16% this year. By comparison, Russia registered negative 11%, while China recorded a positive 7% rating. The survey did not specify reasons behind the relatively favorable perception of China. Well, most countries have a more favorable view of China than of the United States. 63 of the 83 surveyed countries view China more positively. U.S. allies such as Israel, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Ukraine strongly prefer the United States, but these are relative exceptions. In Europe, net perceptions of China are higher than those of the U.S. in 20 of the 23 surveyed countries. The same is true across much of Asia Pacific and Latin America. Now, the gap is especially wide in West Asia and North Africa, where countries like Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt view China far more positively than the U.S.
Prime Minister Modi has urged Indian citizens to support the country as it navigates global economic turbulence, supply chain disruptions and rising prices triggered by international conflicts.
Now, speaking at a public event in Hyderabad, PM Modi said patriotism is not only about sacrifice on the battlefield, but also about how people live, consume and contribute to the nation during challenging times. In a broad appeal, the Indian Prime Minister urged citizens to reduce their dependence on imports and help conserve the country's foreign exchange reserves. PM Modi asked people to cut petrol and diesel consumption by using metros and public transport wherever available and shifting goods transport to India's rail network.
साथियों, आज जो संकट है उसमें हमें विदेशी मुद्रा बचाने पर भी बहुत जोर देना होगा, क्योंकि दुनिया में पेट्रोल डीजल इतना ज्यादा महंगा हो गया है, पहले से कई गुना ज्यादा कीमतें बढ़ गई है। तो हम सबका दायित्व है कि पेट्रोल डीजल की खरीद पर जो विदेशी मुद्रा खर्च होती है, पेट्रोल डीजल बचाकर हमें वो मुद्रा भी बचानी है।
The Prime Minister reminded Indians of the COVID-era measures. The Prime Minister made an appeal for work-from-home arrangements, online conferences and virtual meetings. PM Modi also asked Indians to help preserve foreign exchange by avoiding what he described as non-essential spending abroad. He urged people to skip unnecessary foreign travel and overseas vacations. Instead, called on citizens to support domestic tourism and celebrate within the country.
The Prime Minister also requested people to avoid non-essential gold purchases for 1 year, warning that large-scale gold imports put pressure on India's foreign exchange outflows. In a push for greater self-reliance, PM Modi asked citizens to prioritize made-in-India products and support locally manufactured goods.
सोने की खरीद एक और पहलू है जिसमें विदेशी मुद्रा बहुत अधिक खर्च होती है। एक जमाना था जब संकट आता था, कोई युद्ध होता था, तो लोग देश हित में सोना दान दे देते थे। आज दान की जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन देश हित में हमको ये तय करना पड़ेगा कि साल भर तक घर में कोई भी फंक्शन हो, कोई भी कार्यक्रम हो, हम सोने के गहने नहीं खरीदेंगे, सोना नहीं खरीदेंगे। विदेशी मुद्रा बचाने के लिए हमारी देशभक्ति हमें चुनौती दे रही है और हमें इस चुनौती को स्वीकार करते हुए विदेशी मुद्रा को बचाना होगा।
Now, the Prime Minister's message extended to India's farming sector as well. PM Modi asked farmers to cut chemical fertilizer use by half, move towards natural farming methods and help protect soil health while reducing dependence on imported agricultural inputs.
Now, in Gaza City, a student-led chess club is offering residents a rare sense of calm amid the ongoing war.
And of course, it's founded by 19-year-old certified player Rahat Aras. The club brings together people of different ages and backgrounds through the game. More in this report. Short break after that. World DNA will continue. Come right back.
It brings together all age groups because chess doesn't define you by gender or age. It unites you as a mind. In the end, two people are dueling with their minds, not based on who they are or any other form of discrimination.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Get the latest update.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss on this side of the show. Let's start with the headlines.
what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be taken out before the war against Iran can be considered over.
An Iranian proposal sent to US calls for an end of the war on all fronts, war reparations by the US, full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. The US president rejects the plan as totally unacceptable.
Amid tension with the U.S., Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson shares post on Battle of Karachi, where a Persian army defeated Rome's legions in an asymmetric victory. Post ends with a message: history repeats itself.
China announces dates of US President Donald Trump's upcoming state visit. Trump will visit China from the 13th of May to the 15th.
Senior U.S. and Chinese officials will meet in Seoul this week for trade talks ahead of a summit between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. The Seoul meeting is expected to be focused around tariffs, economic ties, and regional tensions. Now, Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir has given a press conference. He spent a large portion of it responding to statements by the Indian Army.
And this was given on the anniversary of Operation Sindoor. Munir presented Pakistan's version of the events, how they see it, on how the 88-hour conflict panned out and the way it ended. Munir claimed that India appealed for a ceasefire through the United States, and this directly contradicts a statement which came in from Pakistan itself, an earlier statement by Pakistan's own Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar in an interview with Al Jazeera. This was aired in September 2025. Dar had made it clear that India never agreed to any third-party mediation that brought the ceasefire in place.
Well, the Indian Army has since day one maintained with evidence that it was Pakistan that urged India for a ceasefire and reached out to stop the strikes.
We struck hard, achieved clearly defined objectives, and then decided to cease hostilities when the Pakistanis were compelled to negotiate and requested us to stop.
Pakistan's army chief also claimed that it was a battle of ideologies between India and Pakistan. The Indian side has consistently maintained that it will not tolerate cross-border terrorism. India launched Operation Sindoor in response to the Pahalgam terrorist attack. The Pahalgam attack was the first escalation which came from Pakistan's side. India struck 9 terror hubs when Operation Sindoor was launched. These terror hubs were located inside Pakistan, including Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and that included the headquarters of the internationally recognized terror outfit Lashkar-e-Toiba in Muridke.
In a joint press conference in Rajasthan's Jaipur, the Indian Army had exposed Pakistan's victory claim. Former DGMO Lieutenant General Rajiv Kai has said that India has provided satellite images to prove the damage done to Pakistani side, while Islamabad has engaged in rhetoric to counter hard facts.
We came with you with videos, with photographs, with timestamps on what we did. Have you seen any authentic video being put up by the Pakistanis? So narratives apart. So the biggest misconception that they tried to peddle is that we won the war. But I think that's come undone since then. All their stories have fallen flat.
A Pakistan Taliban splinter group has claimed responsibility for a deadly suicide assault on a security post in northwest Pakistan.
It had killed 14 police officers. Now, in a message sent to media, Ittihad-ul-Mujahideen Pakistan, a newly formed militant outfit, claimed responsibility for the attack. The group says it was created by splinter factions of the Pakistani Taliban, known as the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, though authorities allege it is merely a front organization for the TTP.
On Sunday, Pakistan held a state funeral for the 14 police officers killed in the attack. Now, according to police, a suicide bomber accompanied by several gunmen rammed an explosives-laden car into a security post in Bannu district near the Afghan border late on Saturday. The powerful blast, followed by a fierce gun battle, killed several officers, while others were trapped and died after parts of the building collapsed. At least 3 officers were also injured in the incident.
Well, Pakistan has seen a sharp rise in militant attacks in recent years, and many of them attributed to the TTP, an ally of Afghanistan's ruling Taliban that returned to power in Kabul in 2021. Islamabad has repeatedly accused the Afghan Taliban government of sheltering TTP militants, allegations that Kabul continues to deny. Well, strained ties between the neighboring countries have fueled recurring cross-border clashes since late February, leaving hundreds dead on both sides. Now, hundreds of people joined a women's march in Pakistan's port city of Karachi.
They were protesting against the oppression of women and transgender people in Pakistan.
The participants carried banners and placards and chanted slogans calling for freedom. The march took place despite the local authorities putting over 24 restrictions, including a ban on promoting LGBTQ content, prohibition on the objectionable clothing, and limits on anti-state and anti-religious slogans, banners, speeches, and other material. Well, many participants spoke of their desire for safe environments for women, the need for the enforcement of women's rights, and an end to the discriminatory laws in the country.
Marital rape should be acknowledged as rape, should be punished, the rapist should be punished and not allowed to go free. So that's one of our major demands this year. Then we are also demanding shelter and safety for women, because women have no spaces of shelter in this city, in this province. There are very few shelters where women can go to. So we demand shelters for women. We are also saying and asking for an end to the PICA law, because we feel that affects each one of us as peaceful citizens. It affects our lives, it affects our security.
Participants also called for compulsory, comprehensive and age-appropriate reproductive health and physical safety education to be provided at all levels of education across Sindh. They also demanded that defamation be decriminalized and the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act be completely repealed.
The slogan of Aurat March is, "My body, my choice, my life, my authority." The state has no role in deciding what choices I make in my own life for my well-being and for the future generations to come. I'm a mother myself. Today, I'm not here for myself only. I'm here for my children as well, because raising children is not just my responsibility or duty alone. The father who brings those children into this world has an equal responsibility too.
And Portugal has backed the long-awaited India-EU free trade agreement, with a senior minister saying the deal is now in its last mile.
And it can come into effect by January 2027. In an interview with WION's Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Simba, Portugal's Secretary of State for Economy, João Rui Ferreira, has said that Lisbon has supported the agreement since day one. He added that Portugal sees major opportunities for cooperation with India, including on clean energy, infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, technology, and skilled workforce mobility. Here's an excerpt. Listen in.
How do Portugal companies see India as an investment destination, ease of doing business, as well as you have already pointed out, India as the 4th largest economy? So what opportunities do you look at India as an economic super power in many ways?
companies see, let's separate infrastructures from industrial development. So in infrastructures, I think we have companies, I'm strongly believe, some of them came with me in the mission, they see this, the infrastructure development as an opportunity so that can take a part on that. As a contractor, as an electrical developer, as an energy developer as well, so they can bring their knowledge, their competencies. They have been doing this all over the world, and they can take a part on that.
Moving on, former Thailand Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra has been released early from prison after serving part of his sentence.
He will spend the remaining month of his sentence at his home. He will be required to wear an electronic monitor during his 4-month probation period. Hundreds of supporters gathered outside Bangkok jail when he walked out of prison. He hugged his family members and waved at the crowd while his red-clad supporters started chanting, "We love Thaksin."
Well, 76-year-old telecoms billionaire had been serving a 1-year prison sentence for corruption since last September, following a court rule that deemed he had wrongfully stayed in hospital to avoid jail time. After 15 years in self-imposed exile, Shinawatra returned to Thailand in 2023 to face an 8-year prison sentence over convictions linked to conflicts of interest and abuse of power during his 2001 to 2006 prime minister term. Although the sentence was later reduced to 1 year by the king. However, he spent only a few hours in prison before being transferred to a hospital after complaining of chest pains and heart-related issues. Well, he then remained in VIP hospital ward for 6 months until being released on parole. In September last year, Thailand's Supreme Court ruled that he must serve time in prison, saying he and his doctors had deliberately prolonged his hospital stay through minor and medically unnecessary procedures.
His Pheu Thai party suffered its worst ever election performance in February, falling to 3rd place and fueling uncertainty over the future of Shinawatra's political dynasty. However, the party's role in the ruling coalition led by Conservative Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has kept alive the prospect of a political resurgence. Wall Street stocks are surging to new highs. Oil prices are certainly not back to their lows, and neither are interest rate expectations.
And one of those things surely can be right. And in this next report, we decode what investors could be getting wrong about central bank policy as we build through another big week in global markets. Take a look.
One of many striking features of markets right now is the gap between stocks and oil prices. Wall Street stocks have shrugged off their mid-war losses and are surging to new highs. Oil prices remain well above pre-war levels and, by extension, central banks' expectations. It's hard to believe both are right. When it comes to the way investors are thinking about central banks, it looks particularly difficult to square with fundamental market views. First, Fed rate hikes. Markets now think rates are more likely to go up than down, albeit marginally, after weeks of pricing cuts. The spread between US and Eurozone interest rates has widened. The scale of repricing since the war began now looks identical in both regions. That's a change. For several weeks, the working assumption was that Europe faced a much more severe inflation shock, warranting greater tightening than in the US. Why the shift? Eurozone data has undershot expectations while the US has held up better. The recovery in Wall Street stock weakens the case for near-term cuts, and the Fed itself has made a concentrated effort to talk up market rate expectations. With several officials keen to ditch the easing bias, but the US growth is heavily concentrated. Private health and social care continues to account for a large portion of job creation, but both those sectors account for less than 20% of total employment. Separately, the UK repricing looks strange. Interest rates are now seen more than a percentage point higher in a year's time than before the war. That is around 0.4% more than the equivalent ECB repricing. That partly reflects the experience of 2022 when Britain emerged with a bigger and more persistent inflation problem. The UK is often described as being particularly sensitive to energy shocks. Markets still appear to be overplaying the energy channel. Expectations for the ECB and BOE are still trading very tightly with oil prices. The big event in the coming week will be Jerome Powell's final day as Fed chair, with Kevin Warsh taking over on Friday, May 15th. Investors will also closely watch U.S. retail inflation data on Tuesday for more clues. A second consecutive 0.9% month-on-month print is expected at the headline level. That is attributable mainly to the surge in gasoline and diesel prices. Higher airline fares will also contribute, while a rebound in medical care and recreation risk a 0.3% for core inflation reading that will push the annual rate up to 2.7%. However, analysts continue to believe the headline surge is temporary, given the lack of demand impetus that would risk broader, more persistent inflation. This is Bureau Report. WION World is One.
Now, Germany's already struggling industry was pushed further into negative territory when the Iran war started.
Weak March industrial production suggests that a downward revision of the surprisingly strong March quarter GDP data is still possible. German industrial production weakened further in March as the West Asia crisis started to take its toll. The industrial data for March illustrates the struggle of German industries to gain momentum in the March quarter of this year. The February drop was revised downwards and March showed a 0.7% month-on-month decline. And that takes industrial production for the quarter to over 1% weaker than in the final quarter of 2025. The March drop was mainly driven by falling production in factories. On a more positive note, activity in the construction sector rebounded somewhat in March.
And at the same time, export growth slowed to 0.5% from 4.7% in February. Even as imports surged once again, this time by more than 5%, the trade surplus narrowed significantly to the lowest level since November last year.
Well, the German economy surprisingly showed a positive performance in the March quarter, growing by 0.3%. Against this background, the latest industrial data is even more of a look in the rearview mirror than normal. Still, the fourth consecutive month without growth in industrial production provides clear insights into the German economy.
Germany needs at least 1% growth in the current quarter to bring industrial production back into positive territory. Now, that development currently looks unlikely. Looking ahead, the outlook for German industry and the entire economy has worsened again.
The Iran war and soaring energy prices have again exposed Germany. The country is one of Europe's largest net importers of energy. The so-called energy-intensive industries in Germany account for some 17% of industrial gross value added and employ just under 1 million people.
Now, the latest U.S. tariff threat adds to the risk. 25% tariffs on European automotives would clearly be another hit for an already battered industry.
And in China, the future of urban transport is taking shape above the ground.
At the China International Consumer Products Expo in Hainan, a saucer-shaped electric aircraft made its public debut. As developers continue to explore new forms of low-altitude mobility, the eVTOL aircraft is designed for short-distance urban travel with vertical takeoff capabilities that eliminate the need for a runway.
Now, its developers say that the project could support future air taxi networks. There's more in this next report. Take a look.
Urban transport is gradually moving beyond roads, with new systems being designed for low-altitude airspace. Electric aircraft, once limited to prototypes, are now being tested for short-distance travel, tourism, and city mobility. At the China International Consumer Products Expo in Hainan, one such design has drawn attention for its unusual shape. A flying saucer-style electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, or eVTOL, has made its public debut. The vehicle features a circular body with rotors integrated into its structure, giving it a design similar to a UFO. But the focus is not just on appearance, it is built for practical low-altitude flight. The aircraft has a maximum takeoff weight of around 1,200 kilograms and can carry up to 4 passengers. Its payload capacity is about 450 kilograms and a total diameter of 5.6 meters. This puts it in the category of short-range electric urban air vehicles. The saucer-shaped aircraft is being positioned for multiple use cases, from cultural tourism to short urban hops and even emergency response missions. Its vertical takeoff capability means it does not require a runway, making it suitable for dense city environments. The project also reflects a shift in design thinking. Instead of traditional aircraft structures, engineers are experimenting with compact, integrated forms that can balance stability, efficiency, and safety.
And the global box office is currently witnessing a massive surge. 2026 can safely cement itself as a year of blockbuster dominance.
From record-breaking animated sequels to star-powered biopics, here is the performance breakdown for the season's biggest titles, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. It continues to be the undisputed heavyweight of 2026 so far. The movie has earned $941.2 million in the global box office. In its sixth week of release, the film is expected to cross the coveted $1 billion mark by the end of May.
Well, The Devil Wears Prada 2 has already reached a global total of $433.2 million in just 2 weeks. This total has effectively surpassed the $326.5 million lifetime earnings of the 2006 original. Well, bolstered by strong turnout over the Mother's Day weekend, the film brought in $43 million from North America in its second frame.
Well, the biopic genre has reached new heights with Michael, which has now garnered $577.3 million globally. The King of Pop's life story grossed $240 million in North America alone, officially overtaking Bohemian Rhapsody to become the highest-grossing music biopic in US history.
The Ryan Gosling star Project Hail Mary has demonstrated remarkable longevity. The movie has earned a total of $655.7 million. The film has been a standout success in international markets. It has successfully outpaced the commercial benchmarks of previous space epics like The Martian and Interstellar.
Then comes Mortal Kombat 2, which fought its way to $63 million global opening over the weekend. The R-rated martial arts epic managed to pull in $40 million domestically, nearly matching the lifetime domestic haul of the 2021 reboot in just 3 days. While it faces a crowded marketplace and steep competition from held-over blockbusters, the film's strong debut in premium formats indicates a loyal fan base.
Well, that's all World Today for today. News and updates will follow on the other side. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION The World is One. Stay tuned.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs, busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION, World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs, busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Vielleicht nur als Impulsant.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Adya Juneja and this is Speed News. Let's start with all the stories making headlines today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war in West Asia is not over yet. In an interview with CBS News, Netanyahu said Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be taken out before the war can be considered over. When asked how the uranium could be removed, he said, and I quote him here, "You go in and you take it out." Netanyahu also claimed that US President Donald Trump had a similar position. When pressed on whether there are military options to seize the hidden uranium, Netanyahu said he would not discuss such possibilities or timetable. US President